Boy, oh boy, we live interesting lives, filled with unexpected challenges. Life is precious, and every day is a miracle. Okay.
Who do you think is the saddest character in Parks and Recreation? For me, it's Chris. Parks and Rec is packed with a cast full of highly expressive and lively characters. They're genuinely fun to watch, and it's one of the show's greatest strengths. From the main Parks and Rec gang all the way down to the minor characters like the townspeople and the city employees.
And her husband Marshall is vivacious.
This that's happening here is not allowed.
Is that what's happening here?
Oh, yeah, we found this bird outside. We tried to turn it into a work whistle like in the beginning of the Flintstones. Tougher than it looked, though.
Amongst the cast full of characters like this, the most vibrant and the brightest personality of them all has got to be Christraeger, a character played by Roblowe.
It's amazing. What is this?
Despite his never-ending positive attitude, after a careful examination, Chris is actually one of the saddest and most tragic characters in the show.
Happy Valentine's Day, Pawnee. For me, it is not happy.
This video is going to take a look at who Christraeger is from the moment he was introduced and make a case for why he's the most tragic character in Parks and Rec.
I made eye contact with him, and it was like staring into the sun.
From the moment he walked through the Parks Department's entrance, Christraeger brought with him an unrelenting enthusiasm and positive attitude. On the surface, it seems like he's always in a great mood, energetic, friendly, and pleasant to be around.
He's like a perfect human man. I can't find one flaw.
He's very attractive as well and has perfect physical health, which is a direct reflection of his life goal and philosophy of being healthy at all times.
I take care of my body above all else. Diet, exercise, supplements, positive thinking. Scientists believe that the first human being who will live 150 years has already been born. I believe I am that human being.
His strong personality and constant upbeat atmosphere around him might come off as a bit too excessive, especially for those who aren't equipped to deal with an extreme extrovert like Chris.
Hey, happy birthday.
His personality is so strong to the point where even the Overlord Orion himself is overwhelmed.
See, I like to take each day at a time. There's nothing in the world we can't accomplish if we try.
I have to go.
It's been great talking to you.
Chris is almost always vibrant, but his behavior can easily come off as narcissistic and obnoxious. This might be the reason why a lot of people dislike him. I personally don't really mind Chris's personality, even though he's basically the opposite of Ron, who's my favorite character of all time, by the way. Obviously, these two dudes are two very different people. It's easy to tell by just a glance, right? But fundamentally, they share a bit of similarities, which is why I love their relationship so much. And I honestly think their friendship is the most underappreciated and underrated element of the show. They both are good and respectable people. They're very confident in their beliefs, which is a really strong and defining characteristic for both of them. They each have their own distinct set of philosophical beliefs and peculiar lifestyles, and they are very open about it. They don't let other people dictate how they live their lives, but the way they go about living it shows one of their biggest differences. While Ron goes about and lives at his own pace, he never actively goes out of his way to subject anyone to his beliefs and personality. He minds his own business and doesn't get involved with other people unless he absolutely has to. Despite claiming he doesn't care about anyone, he's actually very aware of those around him.
Give them time. They'll adjust.
No, they won't. They're miserable. Tom only performs when there's someone to impress, so marooning him on Freak Island isn't helping anyone. And you made April assistant to everyone? You know who April hates? Everyone. And Jerry can only function if no one's looking. You shine a light on him and he shrinks up faster than an Eskimo scrotum.
Chris, on the other hand, shares an irritating trait with Leslie's ex-boyfriend, Justin. Chris and Justin see themselves as the center of the attention. They don't take the time to really understand the people around them.
I love telling people how I feel, mostly because I love most people, and I love telling them that I love them.
This means that Chris would go about and live at his own pace, but because he's unaware of his surroundings, he tends to accidentally steamroll over other people with his personality, much like Leslie does sometimes.
Let me stare at you. while you silently support me on this game plan.
Leslie?
Shh, and
Leslie?
your quiet support means the world to me, as well as your tacit endorsement of all my behaviors.
Jogging. I hate jogging.
Jogging's amazing.
Jogging is the worst, Chris. I mean, I know it keeps you healthy, but God, at what cost?
Well, I'm sorry that I added 5 years to your life. I was in charge of the cake. To be fair, it's not a cake so much as it is a vegetable loaf. You got your mushrooms, your alfalfa sprouts, your spinach, and I had it sweetened with fruit reduction.
But did they ask you to bring a vegetable loaf or a cake?
No, a cake, but this is so much healthier.
So not only does this thing exist, but now you have deprived everyone of cake.
Take a walk, Ron.
Yep.
There are two other qualities that Chris shares with Leslie that I want to highlight. Much like Leslie, Chris also cares deeply about his friends. He's always willing to offer his help whenever anybody needs it.
I'm gonna keep trying, because you are incredible.
Thank you.
And you deserve someone amazing and smart and beautiful.
Thank you.
Get yourself together and go out there and be the woman you always knew you could be.
Thank you so much.
Who was that?
I don't know.
The other thing about Chris that wasn't explored or highlighted nearly enough is how serious he takes his job. As far as I'm concerned, Chris is only second to Leslie Knope herself when it comes to dedication and commitment to their work.
Do you find this personally offensive?
Not personally, no. No, personally, I enjoy a good artistic depiction of the human form. I've dabbled in nude sculpture. I've posed nude. In college, I was in a nude production of cats. But I am not in the nude now, am I? Because we're in a government building. And that would be inappropriate. I have a very strict policy, no office relationships, particularly between a supervisor and an employee. The taxpayers pay us, so we can't have anything appearing even remotely scandalous. I'm just saying, if you can't keep your mouth to yourself, I'm gonna have to suspend you.
This is a major defining trait for Chris, and it actually comes up pretty often. I'll come back to this again later in the video, and it'll be massively important.
I consider myself a caddy to everyone in my life. Nice shot! Great sweeping. Way to be, Duck.
Love him or hate him, Chris Traeger is undeniably the most vibrant and upbeat character in Parks and Recreation. I personally would love to have a friend like Chris, but if you deprive me of cake and replace it with a vegetable loaf, we're gonna have problems.
Oh, and I know that I can be intense, but I'm only trying to be the best me that I can be.
Chris had some rough times and struggled a lot with his mental health throughout his time in Pawnee.
Dr. Richard Nygaard feels that I should face my fears instead of running from them. He's very wise. I see him 5 times a week. He holds my life in his hand like a fragile little bird. See you tonight!
But in the end, he made it out pretty much fine by the time he left. So it's kind of hard to say that Chris had it worse than some of the characters, especially those who didn't end up so well, like Mark.
And yesterday, one of those pigeons took a on me, and I was indoors, so...
But we don't talk about Mark.
Liking the view.
Still got it, Joe.
No, you don't.
My identity was stolen.
His identity was stolen. Tell her about the accounts.
They were frozen.
When I was 18 and I became mayor of my hometown, I used every last dollar we had to open a giant winter sports complex. Called it Ice Town.
And it turned out great and everyone loved it.
Yeah, kinda. It was never completed and I got impeached.
Yuck.
Sweet jugs.
What? He's kind of cute.
Oh, God, Shauna, no.
I just feel like I could fix him, you know?
So what makes Chris Traeger, this seemingly perfect human man with no flaws, the most tragic character in the show? I asked a few people whether they thought Chris is the most tragic character, and a few said his circumstances, what happened to him, and how he was treated weren't as bad as, say, Jerry or Kyle. To me, it's not what happened to him that convinced me. It's the nature of how it happened. What makes Chris the saddest and most tragic character to me is how he gets from here
My goal is to run to the moon.
to here.
I am so happy for you.
Because of his extreme positivity, I think a lot of people fail to notice that from the very start, from the moment he was introduced, he was already a broken and flawed character. I didn't pick up on it until after rewatching it a few times. Chris was obsessed with being physically healthy and maintaining his positive attitude at all times to realize that he's not actually happy with his life. His life as a budget specialist is empty and unfulfilled. He uses physical fitness as a coping mechanism. He has always been miserable, he just didn't know it. And I think that alone is extremely tragic. Adding insult to the injury, the people responsible for causing Chris's breakdown were actually his closest friends. That's just sad. So let's take a look at Chris's journey in Pawnee and the people responsible for his spiral into depression.
Take all the time you need.
Culprit number 1, Christraeger. Even though I believe that most of the blame should fall on his friends, Chris is not blameless for his own meltdown. Chris had his flaws from the very start, and there are 2 traits in particular about Chris that made him a ticking time bomb in my opinion. His obsession with being physically fit and his job.
I was born with a blood disorder, and my parents were told that I had 3 weeks to live, and here I still am.
Chris is in fantastic physical health thanks to his never-ending quest to be as physically healthy as he possibly can and live to be 150 years old. And I don't think he was joking about that either. His life goal and philosophy at all times is to be healthy, and he'll do just about anything to accomplish that.
Good God, what the hell are you doing?
Upside down sit-ups. Great exercise, and it literally lets me see the world from a different perspective.
Isn't there a men's gymnasium where you could do that?
The world's my gymnasium, Ron.
But erosion tea really supercharges the bacteria in your colon. Plus, it smells interesting.
Wow, that's disgusting.
Yes, it's very hard to drink.
Raisins.
It's nature's candy. Now, they're basically grapes, so remember to pace yourself.
What's that thing on your wrist?
Oh!
You are extremely healthy.
I do that literally 50 times a day.
Aren't you afraid that thing might give you cancer?
Well, I am now.
The problem with this is that being healthy starts and ends with himself. Chris was so obsessed with trying to be physically fit that he neglected every other aspect of his life. Because of his job, Chris had to constantly move from town to town fixing budget problems. This means that he never had a chance to settle down and work on his problems.
I forgot that this part of being accounting bros was actually pretty depressing. I mean, after the intense, almost meth-like high of solving accounting puzzles, you're always just beat at the end of the day.
Back in the day, this was all we had. We'd go into a town, we'd fix problems, we'd go back to some rundown motel.
His life is very much unfulfilled, and his mental health is most definitely slowly falling apart. In all his time as a budget specialist, in all the towns he went to, Chris probably never had a real friend who would be there for him and help him no matter what, aside from Ben, obviously. But Ben is pretty much in the same situation as Chris is, so he's not much help either.
I move around a lot, so the friends I make in these cities, they're like Facebook friends, you know? Hey, Doug from Bloomington is thinking about buying a shirt. Come on, Doug, who cares?
If my memory serves me right, and I sure hope it does because I literally just watched this entire series again, Chris never interacted with his family member on screen, not once. And I don't think it was ever mentioned that he did anything with them off screen either. So I suppose it's safe to say that Christraeger has always been lonely. He literally exercises to escape falling into a pit of despair. Being physically healthy is a coping mechanism for Chris, and is a pillar that's holding up his positive outlook. We can see just how fragile and vulnerable Chris really is once there's a crack in that pillar. When Chris finds out he had tendonitis, he very suddenly became extremely depressed.
Well, good news is this is just tendonitis.
How's that good news?
The other option was shoulder cancer.
Really? Oh, hi, Ann Perkins.
Hi. How are you?
I'm dying.
What?
The one thing he prides himself in, the one thing that holds him together, is brought into question. He's being faced with a flaw that he's never had to deal with for a very long time. This is probably the first time he's ever had to face his own mortality.
Oh my God. Death is inescapable. Goodbye, Ann Perkins.
He is now aware of the possibility that his lifespan may be significantly shorter than he anticipated, and that he might not live to be 150 after all. The silver lining in this incident is that Chris discovers a new resolution. After facing the possibility of death, he realizes there's more to life he's been missing out on.
What's the point in doing 10,000 push-ups if you're going to do them alone? I'd much rather do 5,000 push-ups with a wonderful woman sitting on my back to increase my resistance.
Culprit number 2, the city of Pawnee, Indiana. Yes, the city of Pawnee itself. Right off the bat, this is not the right town for Chris. It's literally the opposite of what he stands for. Chris is extremely healthy, and this town and its people are the opposite of that.
Well, it's called the Good Earth Salad, but really it's just cheese, toffee, and gummy bear worms. This town is really unhealthy.
Because Pawnee has the very first documented case of mega diabetes, and the only known occurrence of Lou Gehrig's other disease. We've been written about in textbooks.
Something healthy. Cherry tomato. Nope. Gumball. Oh.
His initial experience in Pawnee was largely terrible, and I like to think that this is the type of stuff he has to deal with if he were to stay.
I had mentioned to Anne that it would be fun if you two went on a date. So then you could talk about the money and then, you know, maybe give it to me.
Wow. I've just had my first bad date. My body tends to lose a lot of fluids when it's sick. My brain is on fire. I'm dying.
Well, you definitely have the flu.
Oh my God.
He literally has to go to a different town just to get the food he typically eats. It's just not a good fit to begin with.
What is Grain and Simple?
It's a health food store.
Pawnee doesn't have a health food store.
No, but Snurling does, and it's only a 40-minute drive.
The city of Pawnee and the friends Chris made while he was there are the ones responsible for driving him into depression. Chris is very much a ticking time bomb, but his friends sure did speed up the explosion. The people he trusted, the ones that are supposed to be on his side, are the ones that broke him. Now to me, that is very sad and tragic. I would feel sorry if that was to happen to someone for real. But believe it or not, this is actually the best thing that could possibly happen to Chris Traeger as a character. It started in an episode of season 3 called Flu Season. It's the episode where Chris caught the flu and said the famous ad-lib line,
"Stop pooping."
This episode is where we start to see some development in Chris Traeger as a character, and probably for a lot of people feels like he's relatable for the first time. Of course, the fan favorite
"Stop pooping"
line helped, but the thing that helped the character Chris Traeger the most is the fact that we get to see how fragile he really is. Pawnee's flu reveals that Chris Traeger, a seemingly perfect human man, will collapse at the slightest setback.
You're burning up. What?
I have to get out of here. I have 2.8% body fat. My body's like a microchip. A grain of sand could destroy it. My body's a microchip.
This means that Chris Traeger indeed has flaws. The reason why this is such a big deal is because up until this episode, we have yet to see one thing wrong with Chris. Before this episode, Chris was a superhuman with an always-on positive attitude. Being in a town and around people that actively try to uncover his deeply buried flaws does two things for Chris. First, as far as the story goes, when Chris finally knows what his flaws are, he can finally work on them and improve himself for the better, which he did throughout his time in Pawnee. Second, it brings a new dimension to the character. You could say it's what makes the character relatable. Flaws resonate with people. Whether you're aware of it or not, people do tend to relate to their favorite character because of their flaws. The Flu Season episode is highly significant in Chris's development, and it also played a huge role in solidifying him as a mainstay character. In an interview with Vanity Fair, roblowe himself credited this episode for landing him a permanent role in Parks and Rec.
We were doing an episode that's called the flu episode, where he gets very, very sick and he looks in the mirror and says, "Stop pooping." And that's an ad-lib. And when I looked in the mirror and ad-libbed that, I think Mike Schur was like, we're keeping him. Seasons into playing Chris, I was like, I wonder if there's just other layers to Chris. Nope, there's none. That Chris could be excited about the most mundane, boring thing. It just was a well that never ran dry.
I might get a lot of heat for this because I actually disagree with roblowe on Chris not having more layers to him. Yes, Chris Traeger can seem one-dimensional with his constant enthusiasm, but there's another, more interesting side to that coin. The most relatable and interesting, and quite frankly, hilarious part about Chris is when his overly positive attitude crumbles. As the show progresses, Chris's character arc is more about how he slowly loses his confidence and upbeat personality that defines who he is, then builds himself back up to be a better, more fulfilled version of himself, rather than just him being constantly happy all the time. Because being constantly happy all the time is not really an arc at all. It's more like a straight line, and straight line characters just don't work. Okay, so I was gonna make this topic into one long video. I already recorded and everything, I just have to edit. But I'm going back to college in a couple of days, and I just don't know if I'm going to have enough time. Hopefully I do, but I figured I should just upload what I have right now and break the whole thing into 2 or 3 parts, because it's probably going to be too long as one video anyway. This one only gone over 2 reasons why Chris got depressed. There are 7 in total. Hopefully I can finish the rest soon. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end. I hope to see you again soon.